welcome to the Dell Technologies PodFerence After Show. I'm your host, Jill Schlesinger from the Jill on Money podcast. Okay, before we start with this really engaging and important conversation, quick disclaimer. This video meeting may be live streamed via the internet or one or more social media platforms. It may be recorded, played back in portions or in its entirety by Odyssey, Group M, or Dell On Air on their websites, on social media pages. By participating in the video meeting, you are in fact consenting to the use and distribution of the video meeting, including your image and your likeness, your statements and actions. If you do not consent, you must leave the meeting right now. If you engage in any inappropriate activity or behavior during the video meeting, you may be removed from the video meeting with or without notice. Did I scare you? Stick around. It's all going to be great because today we are talking about the unique challenges that small businesses have confronted amid this once in a generation pandemic and how they are adapting to a post-COVID world. Joining us today, very special guest, Omar Zenhom. He is the founder of the $100 MBA, which is an alternative business education and community online. He also, thankfully, is the host of the $100 MBA show. It's a daily podcast, provides 10-minute business lessons. We are also joined by Eric Day. He is a senior vice president of Dell Technologies Small Business Division. Drives initiatives that support the company's goals and helps entrepreneurs scale and prosper globally. So, Omar and Eric, welcome to the after show. So, Omar, let's get into this. Obviously, the idea behind the episode you've done for us is how to build a software that scales. Why is this so important?
It's really important because we don't know what the future holds. Sometimes we create a product, a service, and we're not really sure how the market is going to respond. That's the nature of business, and you need to be ready for anything. So scaling is something you need to think about from day one, not just in terms of the product and its growth, but also the idea of the product. What else can you do to serve those customers? What other problems can you solve?
And Eric, obviously, I'm sure that you got many a panic-stricken email, call, text from folks throughout the pandemic, these small business owners who really were trying to adapt so quickly. I mean, it's one thing to be a big company that already had remote operations. What was the response? What were some of the things you were seeing, especially in those early days of the pandemic?
It's ironic that Omar talked about scaling because I think that was one of the biggest issues that I saw as, these small businesses try to kind of survive this pandemic is their technology wasn't up to speed of where it needed to be literally in order to kind of get to where they needed to be. As you introduce video technology, as you introduce more sound quality, you're adding 6 or 7 devices at your home setup in order to be able to drive these video conferences. The technology wasn't where it needed to be because people think, oh, I could have a computer for 4 or 5 years. And so a lot of the work that we did at Dell Technologies was to go out there and teach small businesses about the importance of scaling to the latest and greatest and investing in technology because it is something that will make you so much more productive that will ultimately save you costs in the long run. And so many small businesses, are a little bit afraid of technology still. And it's important for us to have an open environment for them to ask even the silliest of questions when it comes to technology so that we can get them the help that they need in order to be able to survive and ultimately thrive in all of this.
Omar, I wonder if sometimes we have a fear, we have the anxiety, it seems like it's too much. How can we help people get over that hurdle? I mean, it's sort of like telling a smoker, don't you know that smoking's bad for you? I mean, they know they have to do it. What can we do to help them get over that hurdle?
I love this question because the answer is what really allowed me to persevere as an entrepreneur. One of the best things any entrepreneur that's dealing with fear, dealing with worry, anxiety, the challenges ahead, the best thing they can do is actually to read biographies of other entrepreneurs, other business owners, because what you realize is that, wow, challenges, failure, these are rites of passage. I have to go through them to be successful. I remember reading, Shoe Dog, Phil Knight's memoir, and I was just like, man, this guy just ate glass for 20 years. Like it was so challenging for him. And every single biography I read, everybody's going to be challenged in different ways. And what you realize is that I need to get over that. I need to understand that these fears are fine. I can feel them, but I can't let them stop me. I have to keep on moving forward, embrace whatever comes, whether it's a failure, whether it's a mistake, whether it's hard. And that's the best advice I can give is just, read those who've come before us that inspire us. You'll realize, they had it tough as well.
Omar, can you just go back in time a little bit and talk about your own journey? Because there may be some folks who aren't familiar with you and your story, which is pretty interesting. So tell us a little bit about how you got to this place.
I actually started out as an educator, as a teacher. I was an English teacher in the high school and university level for over 13 years. My first endeavor in entrepreneurship was actually eBay. I was arbitraging rare Air Jordan sneakers. But it was that moment that I actually made money outside of a paycheck that made me realize, okay, this is pretty interesting. I read a few books that kind of changed my perspective on entrepreneurship. It really unlocked a lot of things for me in terms of just who are these incredible people that create things out of thin air called entrepreneurs. And it really kept me going to kind of try other things. And I basically side hustled. I built small businesses on the side while I was teaching for over a decade. Eventually, I got frustrated in my day job and I decided to take that leap of faith and become a full-time entrepreneur. I always say in that moment, my frustration outgrew my fear, and I decided to go full-time. And when I went through that process, I had a lot of self-doubt. I had a lot of insecurities, and I actually went to business school, into Wharton Business School for a semester at 30 years old. To try to prove to myself, oh, maybe I should get an MBA to be good at business and run my own business. Even though I ran businesses on the side for a while, I still wasn't confident enough. And through that experience and dropping a whole lot of money, I realized, oh, these institutions don't have a monopoly on education. I can learn a lot of things on my own. I can take this money, invest it, and start my own business. I actually got pulled aside from my marketing professor, and he was just like, "What are you doing here? You're 30 years old, and you kind of have a couple businesses on the side. You don't fit the mold." And I was like, "Oh, I'm here to become a great entrepreneur." He's like, you don't get an MBA for that. You get an MBA to work for Goldman Sachs or Morgan Stanley at the time. But at that moment, I realized, okay, how many people are in that position where they feel like they need to know the foundations of business, but don't want to drop $100,000 on tuition? And that's kind of where I came up with the $100 MBA, which is enough education to get you going, enough education for you to start something and build something and learn through your experiences. And from there, I started my own businesses. I have my own software company, which is a webinar software called Webinar Ninja in 2014. I launched that, just celebrated 7 years. And a lot of what I share on the podcast are my experiences, the trials, the difficulties, making hires, making difficult fires, how to pivot when things change in marketing, all that kind of stuff. So that's a little bit about how I got to here today.
I think it's so interesting. Often people will contact me and they'll say, I want to get an MBA. What do you think? And how do we do this? And, I'm always reluctant because, listen, my girlfriend says to me like, oh, you know what? You're the only person I know who doesn't have an advanced degree. I said, but I think I'm the happiest. But I think that there's something to be said for, when you go and get an advanced degree, first of all, you do have to have scads of money. And you have to ask yourself, what will I be gaining from that on the other side, right? And so do you find that credential, which may open your door at Goldman Sachs or Morgan Stanley or McKinsey, but are you learning something? Like, who should get an MBA and pay all that money for it?
So there are 3 things that an MBA gets you. And I always say, if you can get them elsewhere, or those things are not important to you, then you shouldn't get an MBA. So these 3 things are, number 1 is the information. You're going to go and you're going to learn some things, but institutions don't have a monopoly in this information. You can learn them from books. You can learn them from online courses. You can learn them through apprenticeship. You can work in a startup and learn a whole bunch of stuff and get paid for it. So that's, box number one. Box number two is a lot of people get an MBA to network. Okay. So a lot of people, they meet some very interesting people that are very successful in the future because they got into this prestigious school. So obviously they have something going for them. And networking is a big reason why a lot of people get MBAs. Having said that, it's an expensive networking bill. Like I can go to like 10 conferences, online, offline, network with people. I can do founders dinners. I can spend $10,000 and invite some incredible entrepreneurs and have dinners with them and pick their brains and learn from their experiences. So networking is not, again, only for those who get an MBA. You can do this on your own with a little bit of effort and a little bit of creativity. And then the third thing is it's basically a permission slip to get a good job. You get a piece of paper that says you are qualified to get a great job. So if you're not looking to go into the corporate world, if you're looking to start your own thing and be your own boss and build your own business, then it's kind of worthless. Like I have a bachelor's and a master's degree in education. I don't use it. I don't have to show that to anybody to run my business. I may use the information or what I've learned through my podcast and things like that. But those are kind of the three boxes, so you can understand if this is for you or not.
Eric, I know that you have been in touch with so many, probably thousands, tens of thousands of different entrepreneurs. And if you were going to give advice to younger folks who are watching this, and maybe they're, they have a side hustle. They're like, Omar, I got a side hustle. What is it that you think is the moment? What should you be asking yourself about whether to go for it or not? What do you think?
I mean, I'm a pretty kind of gut, I go with my gut kind of person. I make decisions using my gut. I think your gut is something that you need to learn how to trust. You need to combine it with data, and then you need to make a good decision. I believe that if anyone has that entrepreneurial spirit and there is something that they truly believe in, that there's nothing stopping them from trying. And I very similar to Omar, I got my MBA at 40, and it was only to do even more things in my career at a big company. I sometimes feel like there's not an entrepreneurial bone in my body, but as I've worked with entrepreneurs and I've heard their stories, I only wish that I kind of went with my gut a little bit more when I was younger, because I do believe that this intuition that you have, I think it is the fire of an entrepreneur. And I think that is something that you really need to believe in. And guess what? If it doesn't work out, I've met many entrepreneurs that tried it, had great ideas. At the end, it wasn't for them, and they came back. And there's this massive thing called corporate America that we're hiring entrepreneurs all the time. There's opportunities abound, and so I think so many people go into entrepreneurship that they don't go into entrepreneurship because they're almost afraid of something, or they're afraid that they won't be successful. But I know what I've learned in my career is that failing forward only teaches you either how to be a better entrepreneur or figure out what you want to do in another capacity. And I think that those that kind of go in 100%, 2 feet first, are the ones that find themselves the most successful. And I think that if you're not afraid to ask for money, and you're not afraid to ask for technology and how to use technology, it would be hard pressed to be successful in this day and age in entrepreneurship.
So Omar, if you could learn what you needed to learn just by being on the job, when you talk to folks out there, when you hear their stories, what are they feeling insecure about right now in terms of like, what are the gaps in either their own skill set or maybe even their own leadership roles? Like, what is it that you're hearing from them that they're feeling like they need a little Omar wisdom? And what are some of those pearls of wisdom?
I think most of what I share with my audience, they kind of already know, but they just need to hear it from somebody else. They feel it inside. One of them is that question in their head: who's going to buy what I have? Who's going to listen to my advice? Who's going to read my book? All that kind of stuff. And one of the things I like to remind people is that, we learn best from people that are just a few steps ahead of us. We don't need the super experts, actually they're not really relatable because they don't even remember how to get started anymore. I've had a podcast for over 7 years. It's hard for me to recall how to start a podcast. Like, it's hard for me to understand, and the climate has changed now. It was a different world back then, but even 7 years ago. But I think that's a good reminder, is that when you're trying to, whatever that product, excuse me, whatever that product or service is, whether you're consulting, whether you're writing a book, whether you're selling e-commerce products, people are just looking for somebody that they can trust, that they enjoy their company, enjoy their brand, and that can connect with. And the thing is that I always tell new entrepreneurs is that what you think about your service, your product, your business actually doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. What really matters is what other people think, is what other your customers think. I might have a great idea for a feature for my software and think that it's brilliant, but I can't be the only customer. I have to have enough critical mass to make it worth the investment it's going to take for me to build it. So my advice is always go minimal viable as possible, put it out there in the market, and let the market decide. Don't let yourself decide. Let other people say, yes, I want this, enough for me to give you my hard-earned dollar.
And Omar, I mean, also you're talking about, like, you have this software company. You're not an engineer. You're not a software engineer. So how did you do this? What mistakes did you make, so that I can hear that, so I don't feel as dumb about the mistakes I've made?
Totally. So one of the things I talk about in my episode is that a lot of people think, when they think about scaling a software business, they think of technology and servers and software, and that's true, but it's actually not the first thing you have to worry about. Your first thing is actually the talent. If you make one great hire to set up your infrastructure, I talk about Taylor in the episode, who eventually became our CTO, but he was just a freelance technical advisor who came in. He was really expensive. The hourly rate was really expensive, but I actually saved money in the long run because he did it faster. He did it with less problems, so I didn't have to fix problems in the future. He built me for scale, so I was able to kind of build upon my software and grow with my customers. So talent is actually the number one thing that really saved me as a non-technical founder, because I was able to find somebody that can, love the product, understand what we're trying to do, and really set us up for success. Now, a lot of people are like, if you're not a technical expert, how do you find great talent? How do you know what's good and what's not good? Believe it or not, 50% of it is the rate. Like, if they're expensive for a reason. The other thing is that, you can look at their previous work. You can look at references. You can get recommendations from other founders. One of the first things I did before I started a software company is just make friends in the industry. I made a lot of friends that have software companies that I can just call upon and say, hey, Noah, I'm trying to find this person. What's the best way to do this? Can you give me your job ad description that I can tweak for myself? You don't need to be the technical person, but as long as you have a good network and you can find good talent, that'll kind of take care of it. And by the way, if you're the founder of the company, you're just not going to have time to code. You need to lead the team. You need to be able to make great hires. You need to innovate and think about the future. So you're going to need somebody else to do that anyway.
And Eric, as you're listening to this, and I see you nodding your head, talk about what kind of things that you are helping entrepreneurs discover about themselves and about their systems. What is it that are some of your best practices?
Yeah, I mean, I think Omar said it best. I mean, I think a lot of, when I talk to new entrepreneurs, I almost talk to them about becoming a technology company or becoming a software company, even if they make a widget, even if they have a service. And it scares them at first, but then we go into this kind of talent conversation, or we go into, finding the right IT consultant, or having a partner like Dell Technologies that ultimately provides a lot of these services for these founders that don't have either the infrastructure or don't have the funds in order to be able to have an entire IT team, working for them. And I think that's the big myth, and kind of one of the things that we're trying to teach entrepreneurs out there. In this day and age, you don't have to have this big, huge IT team in order to be a technology company. You need good partners, you need good talent. You need the good strategists that know about technology that can make sure that you're making the right decisions. And I think you need to ensure that you're buying good quality product. I think that is the keys in order to ensure that we can have this conversation with customers. Or entrepreneurs, we somewhat want to scare them into being technology companies. But the fact of the matter is, in 2021, it is very difficult to, especially after COVID, it's very difficult to be a growing startup, a startup that is going to, if your goal is to be bought, if your goal is to make a lot of money, technology and being part of this technology ecosystem is so incredibly important. And the good news is there's tons of help out there, to Omar's point, that can help you through those decision-making processes, because it can feel intimidating, but there's a ton of expertise out there that can help them on that journey.
So Omar, tell me how you drew upon your background in education. I'm interested in understanding, like, I actually am thinking about it as a manager. It must be great training in some respects.
Oh, it's the best. I think one of the best things I did is when I transitioned to full-time entrepreneurship, I didn't neglect my past. A lot of entrepreneurs, they think, I was an engineer or a developer, but now I'm an entrepreneur, so I'm a life coach. I'm going to forget. That's gold, man, or gal. Like you can coach people on transitioning as a developer into becoming a business owner. There's so much value you can take from it. So I'm glad that I didn't neglect it. I think that teaching is ultimately the best form of sales, because you're educating somebody on why you have their best interest in mind and why your product or service can help or solve their problems. And if you can be able to communicate your ideas clearly to people, that's really the difference between somebody seeing the value in your product and saying, yes, I want it, versus, being confused and not understanding why I need this or want this. One of the things I teach often is a confused mind never buys. So when somebody's confused about something, it's just very hard. That's why all the brilliant, companies out there like Dell, they make their products easy to use, because as soon as it gets confusing, it's just not going to be intuitive. It's not going to make it easy for the customer to continue to enjoy their products or buy their next product. So I always say that, teaching is one of the things that allows you to clarify things, allow people to understand that big ideas can be broken down into smaller ideas so that they can consume it. Also just allows me to leverage the idea that when I was in the classroom, I had to get a result. I had to get these students to pass an exam. I needed to understand these concepts. And so when I'm trying to deal with my customers or work with them, at the end of the day, they're looking for a result. They don't really care about all the features and the benefits, and these are nice to haves. But if I can get them a result, then they'll be happy.
And I think what's interesting is that the simplicity of just explaining something, making sure your customer, your client knows that, and they are more willing to buy. And I think that I'm always amazed. I come from financial services. I'm always amazed. Like, there's so many salespeople who just rely on jargon, and then they almost like bore you to death. I mean, you got to there's so many areas where I've seen this. And yes, you're probably going to sell that product in the moment, and then you're never going to retain that person, and you're not going to create a relationship over the long term. If you sold them something they don't get and they don't really understand, 3 years later, they call up the Jill on Money show. And I'm like, why did you buy that? They're like, I don't know. It was so confusing. It seemed like a guy seemed like gal knew what she was talking about, and so I think that's a really good point. I'm also wondering, in you as a teacher have to bring along a lot of different students of different levels. How did that help you in your management side?
Yeah, totally. The thing that I learned in teaching is a couple things. Number one, it doesn't matter how old the student is. The student could be 30 years old. It could be 13 years old. No matter what their background is, their educational level, they will not receive the information from you if there is no connection, if they don't respect you, if they don't like you, if they don't trust you, right? So actually, trust is more important than what I say or what I do or how I lead my team. So it's really important to for me as the CEO of our companies is that when we bring in a new hire, is that we spend a lot of time building trust, making sure they understand that, hey, this is how you win in our company, and this is the autonomy you're going to have, and how we celebrate when they come. We give them a free dinner to take out with their husband or wife to celebrate their new employment, something so they can feel like, hey, these people really are happy to have me, right? The law of reciprocity kicks in, and people are ready to be led. They're ready to understand, okay, this is how I win in this company. This is what I need to do to be successful. These are the outcomes and the KPIs I need to fulfill. So that's what I learned from teaching myself, because at the end of the day, human beings, we want to feel like we're trusted, that we can connect with one another. After that, it's all gravy. You want to be best friends. You want to lead me to battle, go ahead. But in the beginning, the first step is just trust.
And I would also guess that you would agree that it's also empathy, that you don't just like say
Totally.
stuff, you believe it. I've been struck in, like, we're in this very strange period as we speak, where I'm hearing from a lot of business owners and also big company C-suite folks who are saying that they're having a really hard time messaging the return to work. And what advice do you think that you can provide? And I'll start with you, Eric, just because I know you've managed a lot of people. And people are scared to go back into a workplace. Some people are very comfortable being remote. So other people really do want to be in an office. So what's the right messaging there to give people that sense of why you want them to come back into work? What is important about that? Well, hey, we just had a great year of earnings. Why do I need to be back in the office? Maybe you believe that physical offices are going away in total? But what is your opinion, Eric?
Yeah, it's and I kept thinking around what Omar was saying in his last answer, and the word authenticity came up, because I think it is so important when messaging conversations like this one. I will tell you that within big corporations, this is an incredibly sensitive topic, because you want to, number one, keep your employees safe, but you also want to ensure that you're being inclusive as possible. And to your point, Jill, there are people all across the spectrum of, I want to be in the office every day of the week. I want to be in the office 2 days a week. I don't ever want to come back into office again. And I think the most important thing a company can do, whether you're a small company or a large one, is be as inclusive as you can in that communication, and really trying to ensure that all of your employees are seen in your messaging, in your communications around how you do it, and that you do it safely. I think there's a lot of answers that are unknown, right? Around whether or not you should be vaccinated. What if you've had COVID? I think every company is trying to deal with these and making sure that they're making the right decision to ensure that their company can be as productive as possible, but also keeping people as safe as possible. And I think the key to all of that is to ensure that the messaging is transparent, that it's authentic, and that it's being inclusive. And I think that is going to be the key as we do this. But I think at the end of the day, when all of this is said and done, and people are able to choose, there are going to be times that you're going to want that community. You're going to want that social interaction. That's just human nature. And there are going to be times where you've just had enough and you want to go back home and you want to be in your home office because you want to be alone. And I think that the future is this kind of beautiful hybrid approach where you can have the best of both of those worlds.
Omar, are you hearing from business owners who are now considering chucking the physical office space and going all remote? What is your what are you hearing?
Definitely. There's a lot of businesses that had to, that by force go fully remote, and have found that, things haven't gone south and things are going fine, and the team actually enjoys it. And at the end of the day, I think it all boils down to, making a decision what's best for the company and the team, or in general. Once you know what that is, you need then to make a good argument for that and talk to your team and say, hey, this is the reason why we want to do this or that, whether it's fully remote, whether it's not, whether it's a flexible situation. At the end of the day, what I've learned in the years is that your team, they get it. They understand you're running a business. They understand that you have customers, you have obligations, and they're going to they have some loyalty to the company. So they will do what's best for the company as well, as long as they understand the rationale, as long as it's not just, mandated. They'll get it. It's the ultimate kind of sales exercise. But yeah, there's definitely a lot more openness and willingness to stay remote. I've run a remote team for the last decade. So for me, we were kind of set up beforehand. So we're ready to go, but we still meet in person for team retreats and, conferences and things like that. And that's important to meet in person because that's where you make the connections on a personal level.
And before we go, let's just do something fun. We've all developed like new quirks or habits in this pandemic era, those of us who are lucky enough to work from home. So, Eric, what's new that never existed before when you were pre-pandemic? What's the new Eric? What's your big pandemic learning or takeaway or new habit?
I have to be honest. When I go to the office, I like to dress nice. Like I'm a big kind of, I wear a good pair of pants. I change out my wardrobe a couple times a year. Like it was always nice for me to show up to the office looking good. I don't think I've worn a pair of dress pants in 14 months, right? It's either shorts or pajama pants, or I know that it's cliche because everybody talks about it, but it is true. Like if I need to, be business on top, that's easy, but normally it's always pajama bottoms on the bottom. My husband likes to keep the house at like 68 degrees, so it's always freezing cold in the house. So I need to keep warm.
More than one reason to do it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Comfort and warmth.
Wait a second. Who's the chef? Is one of you more of the chef than the other?
I think Craig, my husband, has definitely created the more of the chef vibe. I think we've done both of a good job, but he is definitely at the helm. And I have to be honest, I've been a bit spoiled because I'm working all day. Like we're on conference calls from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And it's sandwich for lunch, and it's a nice eggs Benedict for breakfast. And so I have to be honest, I've been a little bit spoiled.
Eggs Benedict, good
I know.
God! All right, Omar, give me some pre-pandemic, post-pandemic change. What do you got for me?
I think I'm going to go with the kitchen. We definitely cook so much more now. I actually enjoy eating home more than eating out now because our quality of meals have gotten better over the reps that we've had, whether it's steaks or, pastas or whatever it is. So I'm really glad that we've built that habit because it's healthier. It's just something to do together, me and my wife, Nicole, and we get to, decompress and talk about the day and really separate work from home. One of the best things we did is, have separate offices at home and have a door in the office and just close that door at the end of the day. And that's work. Now life, let's enjoy and make some dinner together.
I have become the cook, and my girlfriend, who is Italian American, maybe the only Italian American person I know who doesn't actually cook. So I have taken on that mantle. I actually found it to be incredibly relaxing. So I had never, when I was in my, the pre-pandemic era, it's like I live in New York City, I can get takeout, I can get, anything I want within 2 seconds. And the ritual of preparing and thinking and just, it kind of gets me out of my news cycle head. And I agree, there's something kind of like pretty amazing about discovering that. So I feel fortunate that I've done it. We'll see how much I keep up with it on the other side of this. I'm not so sure, but I'm game. So I want to thank both of you so much. Omar Zenhom, he's the host of the $100 MBA show, and Eric Day, he's the grand poobah of Dell Technologies Small Business Division. You like that? I gave you a new title, grand poobah. Is that a good one?
Yeah, great.
Thanks so much for joining us for the after show. It has been a great delight. Really nice to get to know both of you. And I think your insights are really, really going to propel many small business owners or would-be small business owners to rethink some of the steps they need to take to move ahead. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Jill.
Thanks, Jill.
Thanks so much for joining us for the Dell Technologies PodFerence After Show. To find more participating podcasts like the ones discussed today, you can search for Dell Technologies PodFerence on the Odyssey app, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts at the end of this episode. You can also check out the Odyssey YouTube channel. Now, don't think it's all over yet. Tomorrow, we have Rhett and Link, the dynamic duo behind Ear Biscuits. We'll talk to you then. Thanks for hanging out with us today.